Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new weekend out there so far. There's quite a bit to discuss in this morning's video, and the first thing we'll speak on is today's weather, current conditions, the latest outlooks. We'll break down the country section by section. We'll spend a little extra time on the southeast because this is really where all the weather's going to be for today into the overnight hours. And then we'll switch gears and we'll talk about what's to come over the next few to several days across portions of the southeast, because the same system that's bringing all the rain today and the storm activity across the southeast will continue to bring the same type of weather over the next few days across this area. But I do think there's a couple days out ahead of us to watch a little bit more, and one of those days is Monday. So we'll break this system down, why it's doing what it's doing, why it's just hanging out with us for so long. And then after we get done doing that, we will speak on an active pattern setting up as we get into later next week that could bring more widespread severe weather chances across the middle of the country. I think it could bring severe weather chances to the eastern U.S. too, and then I think there could be another system behind that. I just think it's going to get active for the second half of May in regards to severe weather. So we'll speak on everything. We'll break it all down. If you're not interested on what's going to happen weather-wise for today, I get it, because most of the country will be pretty relaxed weather-wise. Then just take advantage of those timestamps. Skip right ahead if you want to. Don't blame you one bit. Get the information that you're seeking in these videos, because I promise you I'm going to speak on everything. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put in the comments below, and I will have a Bible devotion at the very end of the video if you're interested in that. Let's get rocking and rolling. So this is current conditions. As you can tell, all the activities in the southeast, we continue to just have this spin, quite literally, of rain, storm activity. Stronger and even severe storms are with us here in Florida. Now, right at this second, nothing is severe, but we even have a little bit of broad rotation with some of these storms in the panhandle of Florida, so be careful with that this morning. But just rounds of heavy rain. We had a bit of what we call a backdoor cold front, cold air damming, that moved through the Carolinas overnight. In fact, it's funny, I actually had to walk outside and take my dog out in the middle of the night, and that cold front was moving in right as I was walking outside. I could feel it. The winds were blowing around. It was like 3-something in the morning. So if you're waking up to a crisp start like across the Carolinas, stuff like that, that is why. But this will only be with us for just a very small amount of time. But a lot of rain overspreading the southeast. We continue to deal with rain this morning across the northeast also. This is because of another area of low pressure, and a ridge has really built over the western and central areas of the country. And most of the flow is going all the way up into Canada. A little bit of shower activity in North Dakota. So that's current conditions. The latest outlooks as far as the Storm Prediction Center outlook. We do have a risk of strong to severe storms across areas of the northern Rockies. I don't think these will be very widespread, but certainly if any do get going, they could hit the severe limits. Really just driven off maybe a small hail, gusty wind threat. And then we have the risk of severe weather down here across areas of the southeast. And that light green, that's just a general risk of thunderstorms. But that dark green, that is a marginal risk of severe weather, level 1 out of 5. There is a bit of a tornado threat, and this is ongoing right now, that small tornado risk. And that green, 2% risk of a tornado. But the other highlighted risk, wind and hail, is just at a 5% for both. So 5% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in size, and then a 5% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in a given location. And now we'll look at the excessive rainfall outlook, which will really only zoom in to areas of the southeast, because this is really the only area I'm somewhat concerned about. And that is, we got the rain falling right now across these areas, but this yellow area here in areas of southeast Alabama, portions of the panhandle of Florida, does have a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded. So just be aware of storms kind of going over some of the same areas, training if you will. And then the green area, just a 5% or higher risk of flash flooding occurring. Now, there is still that 5% risk of flash flooding up here for portions of New England for this pesky low pressure that's been around for what seems like an eternity. But this is finally moving out today, and we'll speak on that a little bit here in a second. But watches, warnings, and advisories. We do have some red flag warnings up here for areas of the Dakotas, northwest Minnesota, and Montana. A lot of the flow is up here, but you're not getting a lot of moisture from that flow. So therefore, it's been dry, winds will kick up, and therefore you have a fire risk. Some heat advisories across California and the orange. Flood watches are up. I think these flood watches could be expanded a little bit further north and northeast over the next 24 hours. But we'll see what happens with that. Flood watches continue up here for areas of New England. So breaking it down section by section, let's speak on the southeast first. And I'll just take a broad look at everything, and then I'll zoom into a couple states. Starting this morning, getting into about early afternoon, you see all this storm activity in central Georgia. You see a lot of storm activity out here in the Gulf. But these little short waves will continue to pivot around this upper low. So we'll get rounds of thunderstorms even in Alabama today. A area of moisture, rain, could make it all the way into northern Alabama, maybe the southern areas of southern counties of Tennessee. It'll continue to rain on and off all the way back west in the Mississippi, maybe even southern Arkansas this afternoon, northern Louisiana. And then we start to get into late evening. That rain finally begins to reach South Carolina. Now, we'll get a little bit of light rain in South Carolina throughout the morning hours. But an area of light rain could get as far north as Middle Tennessee. And then just that area of low pressure just continues to spin around. And we'll just continue just to get isolated to scattered rounds of showers and storms, even overnight across areas of the Deep South. Rain's actually trying to be thrown back all the way into eastern Texas. So slug of heavy rain overnight across areas of the Carolinas. But just a couple areas that I want to zoom into. One is Florida, a state where portions of, most of Florida could use the rain, but especially western and southwestern portions of the peninsula of Florida. But we start to get to about midday. A lot of heavy storm activity out in the Northeast Gulf. And then we got storms up here in the the Panhandle of Florida that could begin to gain some strength. So if you're vacationing Panama City and over at Tallahassee, just along the Panhandle coastline, you could certainly run the risk of some stronger to severe storms and even a tornado risk. There's a low-end tornado risk up here. But we start to take it to about the middle of the afternoon. Maybe some of the action lets up, but by the time we get into 5, 6 p.m., we start to get some big storms in north central Florida, maybe even some storms down here, well south of Orlando. And then we start to get to about 8 p.m. Look at all the widespread storm activity from Jacksonville Point south. Can we get some storms near Tampa, Sarasota, Fort Myers, Cape Coral? We really need the rain here, and I think there's a possibility it could sneak closer to these areas. By the time we get into the late evening hours, we start to get into the overnight hours like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when we could get some storms. So, it might be in the form of those storms. So if you're not a big storm person, unfortunately this rain, like most of the time in the warm season in Florida, it's going to come in the form of heavy downpours, lightning, and thunder, and that could be the case south of Tampa. But these storms could fire up anywhere. So could wake up to a nice rainy morning. You need it down here south of Tampa and southwestern portions of Florida where your worst drought conditions are. There's a D3 extreme drought in place in these areas, and we could definitely use the rain. But waking up tomorrow morning to a lot of storm activity out in the Gulf here. So moving up a little bit further north, Atlanta, the Macon, Savannah, up the Columbia area, just Georgia and South Carolina. Throughout the morning hours, could get a round of rain that gets all the way into the central sections of South Carolina. It's likely going to be just a rainy, dreary, kind of cloudy day. This will keep the temperatures down. Some areas might be trapped in the 60s all day in areas of South Carolina and northern Georgia. But as we start to get into the afternoon hours, the boundary that's separating some pretty dry air and some very moist air, which is hanging out around Georgia, South Carolina right now, will begin to lift back north. So if you're waking up to some dry, pleasant conditions right now, you might feel the humidity get a boost this afternoon, and that will allow for these storms to refire. So Macon to Columbus, over to Statesboro, Savannah, you guys could get some widespread thunderstorm activity. And, I would watch out for these storms later on today. Only really a general risk of thunderstorms in this area, but there could be a sneaky tornado threat in this region for later on this afternoon. So not much. I mean, there's like a marginal risk that does extend all the way into areas of Georgia, but there's not a very high risk of severe weather. But I'd watch out for a very stormy afternoon, evening across central and southern Georgia. And eventually, as we get into the late evening hours, these storms could begin to make their way closer to Savannah, the low country of South Carolina. I mean, this is 11 p.m. This is getting into midnight, and we could be getting a lot of heavy rain surging north into South Carolina into the wee hours of the morning, and then waking up to just a Sunday morning across areas of the Carolinas. So just be aware of that. Rainfall between now and 8 p.m. Sunday. Areas in red, over 2 inches of rain is possible. Purple, 1 to 2 inches of rain. Atlanta going for around an inch, inch and a half. Columbia, an inch. Savannah, 2 to 3 inches of rain. Tallahassee, around 2 inches. And I know it's not showing much down here in southwest of Florida, south of Tampa, but we could get a little bit more than what this is showing, but definitely just a soggy next several days in this entire area. So up here to the northeast, we continue to deal with some rain this morning, but the good news is this is finally getting on out of here. So by the time we're into this afternoon, the only areas really seeing rain across New England is up here near Caribou, the down east areas of Maine. But by the time we get into this evening and then the overnight hours could begin to calm down. Now, a little bit of back end flow could pivot back into New England in the form of some showers. Heck, maybe even mixing with a little bit of wet snow. But by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, most of the Northeast seems pretty good. Maybe a chilly start, but good. Now, the South Central U.S., besides some of that energy on the western side of this upper low getting thrown back into, the coastal areas of Texas and eastern Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas, most of this area seems okay. Just some pesky showers for you folks in those areas I just mentioned. Rain could make it all the way to Little Rock, Memphis by the time we get into the overnight hours, and then just could wake up to just some more rain showers in this area. And I think tomorrow will be a similar day to today. But most of Oklahoma points north is fine. Nothing significant weather-wise. The north central U.S., I mean, it's a nice day. Nothing going on. It's warming up. Most of your flow is to the north up here in Canada. And, you could get some shower activity overnight in the UP. But outside of that, it's a nice day up here. Enjoy your Saturday. Now, I do think that'll change over the next few days. That's just a teaser for what we're about to talk about in this area. So if you're living in the north central U.S., I would say stay tuned or either skip ahead a couple timestamps and we talk about your area here shortly. But the western U.S., same thing. Most of the flow is anchored up to the north. Ridge in place. Now, there is that little bit of green and yellow showing up. I know this doesn't look like much, but there could be some hail and some gusty winds with some of these showers and storms. Karen, you could definitely get some storms today. Just be aware of this. She lives in Montana. Even if I got some folks tuning in from Idaho, be mindful of some storms today. It doesn't look like much on this run, and I even tried to zoom in earlier to this area, and it still just didn't look like much. But you see there's a bigger system looming off the Pacific Northwest coastline. So that's going to move in. That'll be a heavy topic in the coming days. But temperatures, the Northeast will be chilly, 40s, 50s. The closer you get to the southern tier of New York, points south, the nicer it gets, 60s and 70s. There's a pocket of cooler air centered right over Atlanta. It'll probably extend all the way into the upstate of South Carolina, even northeastern areas of Alabama. This is just a pocket of cooler air, and with cloud cover and stuff in place. Atlanta, it's going to be a cool May day. It's going to be pretty cool up here in the UP and Michigan too. But you don't have to drive far and get into the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And this is the ridge working in place. You see how much warmer? You can see a lot more warmer colors on your screen here for the western U.S. This is because a big ridge is anchored over this area. That's why you're starting to see the hundreds show up in the southwest down there at the bottom of your screen. And some 90s up here in Montana and North Dakota. It's hotter in North Dakota than it is in Texas. Significantly hotter. So you can tell there is one heck of a ridge of high pressure overhead. So moving ahead, we're going to talk about the southeast for a few minutes. Now, this is going to be speaking on the pattern coming up between pretty much tomorrow, which the same pattern's in place today, but tomorrow through about midweek next week. Now, tomorrow we do have a marginal risk. I could see this uptrending, but as of now, the marginal risk is a little bit larger for tomorrow than for today, for example. So level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather extends all the way to Tupelo, almost Clarksdale, Mississippi. Goes through Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Montgomery down to Mobile, and basically includes the entire southern half of Georgia and areas of the low country of South Carolina, all of northern and central Florida. General risk of thunderstorms does extend all the way up into southern Illinois. So right now, tornado risk really centered over areas of Alabama, southwest Georgia, and the panhandle of Florida. But listen, this could tweak a little bit. It could, okay? Now, there is a risk of flash flooding, which is larger for tomorrow also. I think today, we'll have some just pesky weather, right? Tomorrow it'll be a little bit more higher end. And then Monday, I think, will be a bigger day to watch. But let's focus on Sunday. There is tomorrow a 15% risk of flash flooding occurring. And this goes from Atlanta over to Augusta, up to Columbia, Charleston, Savannah, Macon, down to Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Columbus, all the way down to Gainesville, and pretty much all the way down to just south of Jacksonville. So 15% risk of flash flooding occurring. Now, let's go to Monday. We just talked about Sunday. This is Monday. Now, Monday is a severe weather threat that I definitely think is going to get bumped up to at least a slight risk. Right now, it's a marginal risk. So we have a level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather from basically Atlanta to Columbia, Augusta, Macon, down to Tallahassee, some of the same areas, Jacksonville, all the way down to almost the Everglades. Okay, includes a good chunk of Florida and a large area of Georgia. And I'm telling you, I'm watching this area. I think that we could have maybe a 5% risk of a tornado issued. You know how I am, guys. I call little shots here and see if I'm going to be right. So compare my knowledge with the experts, if you will. But right now, a marginal risk in place. Okay. Now, there's nothing outside. Well, there's nothing past this that we can look at as far as the outlooks. But if we go and look at the day 3 outlook, now we have an even larger slight risk of flash flooding. So 15% risk of flash flooding occurring. All the way from basically Tampa up to Jacksonville, up the I-95 corridor, includes the entire state of South Carolina and a good chunk of North Carolina, Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, Durham, Wilmington, up to Roanoke, Danville. You guys have a 15% risk of flash flooding occurring. So, even getting into day 4, there is a risk of flash flooding, more so up here for the upper southeast and the mid-Atlantic, Virginia. But this is all because of an upper low with pieces of energy pivoting around it. Now, here's what it looks like in precipitation form, right? The green, blobs of yellow, orange, red. So this is tomorrow, early afternoon. As you can tell, there's a lot of action ongoing all the way from the Mid-South down to Florida, across Georgia, South Carolina. Just looks like a lot of rain and storm activity, and that's what I want you to look at this as, okay? Don't get super detailed on where the splotch of red is on the screen. We'll look at short-range model guidance as it gets closer to us. Now, we start to get into Monday morning. Upper low still spinning around back here. This is slinging in a lot of moisture, a lot of divergence aloft into the southeast. So we're just probably going to continue to get storms from Florida up to Georgia through the Carolinas, waking up to a very soggy start to your work week Monday morning. And then Monday afternoon, I know this looks like just, like I said, blobs of green, yellow, orange, and red, but I do think there'll be somewhat of a more higher and severe weather threat through Georgia and the Carolinas for Monday afternoon, which is when this is. But, we start to get into Tuesday. This energy finally begins to kind of scoot off to the north and northeast. So this is Tuesday afternoon, and we'll go on and take a larger look at this. This is Tuesday afternoon. A lot of the energy starting to get into the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic. And this is Wednesday, still hanging out with us across the Mid-Atlantic, the upper southeast, And this is still with us all the way into Thursday, but it finally starts to relax. So I think that this area of lower pressure, which is this right here, will influence our weather for the next 4 to 5 days. And this is tomorrow, and this is just kind of a more nerdy way of looking at things. The warmer colors on your screen, that salmon kind of reddish orange color, pinkish, whatever you want to call it, that's higher pressure, and the blue is lower pressure. We speak a lot of this on in the tropics. So this area of lower pressure right here that you see up here in portions of Atlantic Canada, the Northeast, this is what's bringing, a soggy morning right now. This is right here is what's bringing a soggy morning across the Southeast right now. So what's happening here is flow pivots around lower pressure in the Northern Hemisphere just like this. So what does that mean? That means on this side of this lower pressure, flow's coming from the south to the north. So what does that mean? That means it's pulling in moisture from the south. It's more moist the further south you go in latitude. So this is basically pulling up slugs of moisture across the southeast, which is why it's raining. Then the immediate association of the low pressure, okay, has moisture associated with it also. Okay, so that will be the general pattern. Now, this is for tomorrow. I want you to watch how this blue blob, if you will, begins to kind of slowly pick up some forward momentum, if you will. So we start to get into Monday, which is, I think, more of a day to watch really for severe weather. It shifts a little bit further inland. Okay, so now we have this more so over just more landmass. Okay, then we get into Tuesday. It's still with us, influencing our weather. Okay, this is probably at this point bringing in a lot of moisture up through this area. This is when it starts to maybe get more active across areas of the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic. Now, I don't think any of this activeness is going to be too crazy, but it's just going to bring just an active weather pattern, and I think it could bring sneaky severe weather threats. And you still have this area of lower pressure showing up on your screen even into Wednesday, and finally it weakens up under the ridge, and we can finally say bye to it. I think by the time we get into about Tuesday, Wednesday, and next week, we're going to be sick of the rain in the southeast. You heard it here first. But the reason I'm a little bit more concerned about this severe weather threat for even Sunday, but Monday, this is Sunday afternoon. This is the actual flow around this lower pressure. You can see how it's going just like that. This is winds in the low levels of the atmosphere, 850 millibars, so about a mile above our heads, 4,000 to 6,000 feet. In this little area right here, this is coming directly out the south and rumbling right over areas of Alabama and Georgia, all the way up to the Cumberland Plateau areas, the Panhandle, Florida. I just want to watch, as we have these little short waves that pivot around, I just want to watch these areas right in here. Better low-level flow that's coming in out of the south, a little bit of a low-level jet, if you will. This will increase kinematics, and this will put a little bit of a spin in the atmosphere. Now, you're lacking a lot of other ingredients, but you don't always need, you don't need perfect ingredients for tornadoes. So watch how this low-level jet sort of increases. So now it's increasing to, say, 30, 40 knots in certain areas and starting to, move overnight into Georgia and the southern Alps. And all of a sudden, into Wednesday afternoon, this is over areas of Georgia and the Carolinas and all the way up to Virginia. So I want to watch for a little bit of more of an increased severe weather threat up through this area for Monday. Okay, better flow in the low levels of the atmosphere on the east side of this upper low. And this could do something tricky that we need to watch. Could increase that severe weather. Remember, just a marginal risk for now. Regardless, we're going to get a good bit of rain. This is between now and 8 a.m. Thursday. The most rain looks to be centered in areas of Georgia, southeast Georgia, low country, South Carolina, northeast Florida, where, 3 to as much as 6 inches of rain could fall. But, healthy amounts of rain for some areas. For some, we're going to end up getting flash flooding, too much rain and too much of a small time frame. But a lot of rain could even get thrown back into Mississippi and Alabama over the next several days too. And just taking a closer look on up the eastern seaboard, this is rainfall, like I said, between now and Thursday, 8 a.m. Definitely a good bit of rain up through the Carolinas, up through Virginia, all the way up to the Mid-Atlantic, a couple inches of rain. So now, switching gears and moving past that, there is a severe weather threat that's going to materialize for later next week. Now, I'm going to show you the only outlook we have for now, and this is for next Thursday. We've been talking about this a little bit more over the last couple videos. We have a 15% risk of severe weather for next Thursday. Slight risk. This includes Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Dubuque, Davenport, the entire state of Illinois, and most of Indiana, and all of southern Wisconsin. So it even gets into areas of southwest lower Michigan. But there's a 15% risk of severe weather. Now, I think there's going to be a severe weather risk a little bit Wednesday and Friday the day after. And I think we could have some severe weather chances that extend kind of this way into the mid-Atlantic. I don't know where exactly, but I think that this severe weather risk could shift actually more so southeast rather than northeast. Speak about it here in a second. But this is the highlighted day for now. I think more risk outlooks will be issued in the days to come for this time period. Now, the reason things could get active, all right, what you're looking at here is 500 millibar flow. This is winds at like 18,000 feet up in the air. This is what you look at when you're trying to figure out where the best flow aloft is, where your best kinematic energy is, your wind energy for storm development and just for storm risk, like damaging winds, tornadoes, etc. So this is getting into Wednesday afternoon next week, the 14th. We got a lot of flow entering the southern high plains and starting to move across the plains, but we're probably lacking a lot of low-level moisture. But as we start to get, say, into Thursday, which is where they have a 15% risk area highlighted, this trough ejects, and we got a lot of increased flow across this area, many states. I mean, I can mention Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, all the way down to Texas, and all the way up here. So we got this area of better kinematic energies beginning to enter the Midwest, which is where you have that 15% risk of severe weather for Thursday. So this is starting to enter this region, and now we got to figure out where's the best moisture. But let's just keep this going for a couple more days. So we start to get into Friday, a little bit of a split flow. Main area flow right up here across the Midwest. Do you have more stable, drier conditions? We got to figure that one out. It all depends on the position of this upper low or upper trough. And we got a lot of enhanced flow to the south across the southern states. And this will most certainly be going across a pretty moist environment. So this is next Friday. Could have a pretty large severe weather threat across these areas right into here. Okay? And then we start to get into next weekend. This is getting into next Saturday, a week from today. We continue to have just enough flow, and I like to use the word flow. I can move my cursor and tell you how many knots this, shows on your screen till the cows come home. But in the end of the day, where you have the areas of bluish, purple, and pink, this is where you have flow in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And if it's certainly overriding a moist environment, then you can have the risk of thunderstorm development and some of these hitting severe. So as we're starting to get like late next week and into early next week, and not this coming week, but the week after, there is some signs that point to an even stronger storm system. But this is in that 8 to 10 day range. Pretty unreliable. So we have to watch for this. But just to back it up and look at Thursday. So this is Thursday afternoon, the 15th. What does the moisture look like for that time frame? Well, look at the dew points rising into the 60s and 70s, all the way up into the Midwest, 60s all the way up into the upper Midwest. So we have a solid plume of moist air being overlapped by a lot of flow in the atmosphere. We call that overlapping ingredients for severe weather. You got kinematics, overlapping thermodynamics, which is your moisture at the surface, your storm fuel, your CAPE levels, surface temperatures and lapse rates and all those things. But at this range, you really just focus on that flow aloft and the moisture at the surface. And on this particular run of the Euro, it shows overlapping ingredients right in that 15% area introduced by the Storm Prediction Center, which is right here in this area. Best overlapping ingredients. Now, I think we could get a severe weather threat extended a little bit further south too, especially if there's as much flow as it says that there is right here. But for now, they're keeping it at bay. And then we move into, say, Friday. This is Friday afternoon, evening. Now, cold front sweeps across, so you can kind of get that one heavy day of severe weather potentially for Thursday, and then we get into Friday, some stable air moves in, cold front, and that's what I'm talking about. We're trying to figure out what the bounds are. Just because you have a ton of flow right here in this area, where you see that purple, 60, 70 knots, interstate speed of flow and 18,000 feet, you'd think, man, we're probably going to get some severe weather in this area. Well, no, because if you look at the dew points in that same time frame, they're in the 40s. So that's not going to get the job done for severe weather. But you get south, Missouri, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, points south, dew points in the 60s and 70s. Then you look at the flow and you see all this flow riding over that moist environment. So I want to watch, if we're taking this particular run as a grand conclusion, which we're absolutely not going to do, I would say your better severe weather threat might be down into here. All right, so we'll see what happens. There's a lot to figure out, and I honestly think we could have a severe weather threat to the Mid-Atlantic Friday too, next Friday, into maybe the weekend. So we'll see what happens. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about next week, and we'll figure it all out. Y'all have a wonderful day. God bless all y'all, and I appreciate y'all very much. Thank you for the people who continue to tune in. I cannot talk. My flow is not great. I'm just kidding. But I appreciate y'all people that just continue to tune in day after day, even in these slower times. It means the world. I cannot tell you how much it means when y'all just come back every single time, make it part of your routine. I always keep it personal, but it's always tough in these slower times because it feels like you're not getting a lot of growth. It feels like things are stagnant. I made a post on Twitter this morning. I'm like, it's just one of those mornings where you don't feel super motivated. I didn't feel motivated to get up and work out. Didn't feel motivated to really do a video, but you just keep it going. You stay disciplined, which I am huge with. So I almost forgot the Bible devotion. I was about to round it off. God had me covered by keeping me rambling in that moment. So let's get in the Word for a minute. Let's see. This morning we are in Romans again, which I think we were in Romans a couple of days ago, but this is Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8, verse 25. It says, "Now if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with patience." Now if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with patience. Guys, I will tell you right off the dot, my patience and my lack of it is definitely my kryptonite. That is what I struggle with the most, and I'll openly admit that. I keep it personal. It is a huge weakness of mine. And of course, you have a lack of patience. It links to other things in your life and affects other things, but it's something that I work on every day. And I don't pretend to be perfect. I know I'm not perfect. None of us are. But I wrote down a couple things. It says what I wrote down in my quiet time this morning. It says patience in God's will is a great expression of faith. Patience builds endurance. Endurance builds your character. That character will help sustain you or ready you when you reach where God is taking you in life. So, and I mentioned allow Him to connect those dots in your life. I mentioned a lot, connecting the dots. And it's true, we pray for the things we want, but I always mention, I encourage you guys to pray for His will in your life. But it's hard for us, very difficult for us to have patience. But sometimes He just doesn't answer things immediately. And sometimes he doesn't always just speak to us immediately either, or show us the signs. He wants you to trust in Him, that He's going to deliver it in His timing. God's timing is a mysterious but beautiful and perfect thing. But I think He just tests us. How much faith and hope do we have in the process? And the more I think that we realize that, and the only way that we really let that marinate in our thoughts and our mind is by continuously building that relationship with Christ, is by doing that and just trusting the process. And I think that in trusting and having faith, you grow. That's why I said, it builds your character. And next thing you know, all of a sudden, everything that you were hoping for, that you were trying to work for, but it just felt like that, that it just wasn't working out. You were lacking patience. You tried to rush the process, but finally you trusted in God with it, in the process. And then when it works out, you go back and you reevaluate who you became in the process of reaching what you were trying to reach for. And so just have patience, and I'm really speaking to myself strongly. In fact, I specifically found scripture this morning on patience for myself, and I can't tell you guys how much this helps me. I know that I've had a lot of feedback on how these segments of these videos help you guys, and I really appreciate it. But this helps me a lot. It challenges me to get in the scripture every morning and to apply it. So thank you for the feedback, but this is helping me out a lot. Cannot tell you how much. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and trust the process. God bless.